الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
Before I begin the khutbah, those brothers that are sitting in the back, if the request is if they could just move forward so that the brothers that come late, there's space for them in the back. Jazakumullah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. وقال تعالى: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا. وقال تعالى: الملك يومئذ الحق للرحمن وكان يوما على الكافرين عسيرا. ويوم يعد الظالم على يديه يقول يا ليتني اتخذت مع الرسول سبيلا يا ويلتى ليتني لم أتخذ فلانا خليلا لقد أضلني عن الذكر بعد إذ جاءني وكان الشيطان للإنسان خذولا. وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: الرجل على دين خليله فلينظر أحدكم من يخالل. صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين والشاكرين. My dear respected elders, brothers and sisters, in the path that we are treading, and the path that we're on, and a believer's path is a path towards Jannah, towards paradise, towards the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ultimately, this is our main goal, is to earn the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, understanding that our stay in this world is short, understanding that this world is a world of imtihan, is a world of tests. It's a place of being tested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's a place wherein we work, we expend all of our resources right? We use all of our resources that we have to earn the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so that we can become successful in the life hereafter. This ultimately is all of our goal, every believer's goal. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He mentions factors that lead, that help and assist a person to stay steadfast on this path of earning the pleasure of Allah in the path of success, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has described success. And then He also mentions factors that will lead a person astray. For example, following your nafs, following our nafs is a path or is a factor. Nafs is a factor, desires, emotions. This is a factor that could lead us away from Allah and it could lead us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. Shaitan is a factor that leads us away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another example that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran is the friends that we keep, the people that we associate ourselves with. This also leads a person either to, it could lead a person towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or it could lead a person away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When it comes to our companionship and those that we associate ourselves with, those that we hang around with, our social circles, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us that Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu attaqullah wa kunu ma'as sadiqin. That all those who believe, fear Allah, bring taqwa, become conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and be amongst the sadiqeen. Yeah, stay in their company. Right? This was a dua of even Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, where he would make dua that, oh Allah, keep me amongst the pious, raise me amongst the pious on the day of judgment. And in this world also keep me amongst the pious, those that are righteous. Understanding that the people that we associate ourselves has a direct effect on us. Now, in the past, and up until maybe a few years ago, the one of the main factors of the path that we tread would be the people that we hang around with. Now we're living in a day and age where it's not so much where our friends, those that we stay, we our companions, those that we keep companionship with, it's not always people, but it's our phones, social media. All right, and we can see this, we can understand this by the amount of time that a normal person spends on their phones, on social media. So now in the past, it was your friend that would have an effect on you. Why? Because you're always talking to them. And this is why Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in a hadith of Tirmidhi, he says that الرَّجُلُ عَلَى دِينِ خَلِيلِهِ, that a man will be on the religion of his friend, right, of his khalil. He'll always be on the religion, yani on the path of his friend. You want to know something about a person, see who his friends are, that'll be enough to tell you about that person. And then he says, فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَحَدُكُمْ مَنْ يُخَالِلْ, and you should be careful of those who you keep close contact with, those who you make your khalil, those who you make a close friend. Why? Because the fact that you're always with them, that the companionship that you have with them, whatever ideas they have, whatever ideologies, whatever behaviors, whatever habits they have, will have an effect on you, right? So now, before in the past, it was physical people, and even till today. But now we have another factor, which is our social media. So when speaking to youngsters, we say that our social media feed, right? The feed, our homepage, the feed that we're continuously watching and we're scrolling through, that is taking the place of friendship, friends. Why? Because you're always listening, right? You're always listening to whatever you're watching on social media, and listening to it continuously, day in and day out, for hours every single day. Definitely, it will have an impact on your life. It'll have an impact in the way you think, right? And we understand this, and when we understand the algorithms in these social media companies, right, that the videos that will be shown to a person will be directly related to the interest that that person has, right? So when it understands that you're thinking in a specific way, then it'll just push movie videos of that topic towards you, because at the end of the day, what they're trying to do is to keep us engaged on their platforms, and that's the easiest way, right? You understand my interests. When someone understands my interests, then by speaking about those interests, you'll keep me engaged for hours on end, right? And this is what happens to many people, is that they open their social media and then they don't even realize it, and 2 hours have gone, 3 hours have passed just scrolling one after the other, right? So the point that I was making is that this also, in this whole talk, I want us to, number one is the physical friends that we have, and then the virtual friends that we have. And a virtual friend might not be an actual person, but it might just be a feed that we have, right? The effect that that has on us. And we need to understand that these things have an effect on us, on our behavior, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, there's two places where He speaks about the effect of, friendship. Two stories are mentioned. The first story is mentioned in Surah Furqan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins by saying, Al-mulku yawma idhin al-haqqu lir-Rahman. He's speaking about the day of judgment, speaking about the day of resurrection. And then he says, on that day, everything will be, all kingdom will be in the power of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will have full authority to do whatever He wishes. وَكَانَ يَوْمًا عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ عَسِيرًا. And he says that on that day, there will be a lot of hardship for the disbelievers. And then immediately after this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning an incident, or He's indicating towards an incident. And He's saying, وَيَوْمَ يَعَدُّ الظَّالِمُ عَلَى يَدَيْهِ يَقُولُ يَا لَيْتَنِ اتَّخَذْتُ مَعَ الرَّسُولِ سَبِيلًا. On that day, a person, an oppressor, a person who oppressed himself by engaging in the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this person, this zalim, this oppressor, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he'll be biting his hands on that day. يَوْمَ يَعَدُّ الظَّالِمُ عَلَى يَدَيْهِ يَقُولُ, and he will be biting his hands out of regret, out of anxiety, because of the anxiety that he has, because of the fear that he will be feeling on that day, standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, realizing that this is make it or break it for me. This is the day that I'm either going to fail or I'm going to succeed, right? This is the day where my entire future, forever and ever, will be decided because of what happens on this day, right? Now he understands the life that he lived, understands the things that he did and the mistakes that he made. So now he's going to have regret, and out of that regret and that anxiousness and that fear, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he'll be biting his hands. Like how when a person is anxious, we usually bite our nails. It's a habit of many people, is that when they're anxious, right, then, or they're nervous, then they start biting their nails. So similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he'll be doing this. And then he'll say, Ya laytani ittakhadhtu ma'a ar-rasuli sabila. That why did I not take the path of the messenger? And why didn't I follow the path of the messenger? I knew what he did. I knew the sunnah. I knew the way he lived. I knew the things that he prioritized. Why didn't I follow that path? Right? And he's telling himself. And then he'll say, Ya waylata laytani lam attakhidh fulanan khalila. That woe be to me. I am destroyed now. I destroyed everything. I had my chance and I lost it. And he'll say, Ya waylata laytani lam attakhidh fulanan khalila. Only if I did not make that person my friend. That fulan my friend. So and so. So on that day, standing when he understands the result and the result of his actions and the way he lived in this world, he'll realize that the reason of his destruction on that day was because of that one friend that he made in this world. Now the Mufassirun, like Imam Qurtubi rahmatullah alayhi and many other Mufassirun, have mentioned a story that took place behind this the revelation of these verses. And this is an incident regarding Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayt. He was a businessman of Mecca. So this is before Hijrah. This is when the Muslims were a minority, right, in Mecca. So Uqba bin Abu Mu'ayt was a businessman, and he would go on business trips, right, with his caravans, and then they would come back to Mecca. And whenever he would come back to Mecca, then it was a habit of his that he would have a feast for all of the people of Mecca, specifically the noblemen of Mecca, those that had gained and those that had a higher status in Mecca. So now he had this feast, and from amongst the noblemen of Mecca was Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He had a high status amongst the people, so he was also invited. And then when when he's presenting food to all of his guests, he presents food to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam does not eat food. He does not partake from the food. And this was a thing of dishonor for a host, that his guest is not eating their food. So he forces and he encourages and he asks the Prophet, that eat. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, I won't eat until you don't recite the kalima. Ibn Ashur, a famous mufassir, in his tafsir, he says that Uqba bin Abu Mu'ayt would sit in the majalis, in the gatherings of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and he was inclined towards accepting Islam, but he just couldn't take that step. But it was something that was on his mind about converting to Islam, becoming a Muslim, accepting the message of the Prophet. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam probably understood this, and he used this as an opportunity to bring him into the fold of Islam. So then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam tells him that recite the kalima. Uqba bin Abu Mu'ayt says no, and then he says that I won't eat until you don't recite the kalima, and and then he recites the kalima. Now we don't know if he actually meant to become a Muslim or not. Now he recites the kalima. So now in everyone's mind he is a Muslim. So then his very close friend was Ubay bin Ka'b. And this person, when he heard, he wasn't there present, when he heard the news reached him that Uqba bin Abu Mu'ayt recited the kalima, he came and he approached him. And he said that, how could you, I am hearing this news, how could you have recited the kalima, right? And he's upset with him, that how could you have done this? So Uqba bin Abu Mu'ayt, immediately he says that, you know what, I didn't actually mean it, I just said it, I recited the kalima so that the Prophet would eat, right? Otherwise I didn't want him not to eat, because that was a source of dishonor for me. So Ubay bin Khalaf, not Ubay bin Ka'b, Ubay bin Khalaf. Ubay bin Khalaf then tells him that I don't believe you. I need you to prove to me that you're not a believer. So he says, how should I prove to you? He says, go spit on the face of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So then, now this is a time, right? You have this close friend. You know what you're supposed to be. You know what is right and what is wrong. And you have a very close friend that might be a very old childhood friend. And this is such a friend that you'll give up everything for. And this is that test that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at times places us in. And this is a test for Uqba bin Abu Mu'ayt as well. And the decisions that we make at these moments could decide our eternal fate. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning in this surah that the decision that he made decided his eternal fate as well. Right? And what did he do? He went and he spat on the face of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, just to prove to Ubay bin Khalaf that he was not a believer. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions his story by saying that on that day, this oppressor, because of him prioritizing his friend over the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will be biting his hands out of fear and anxiety on that day. And he will express that regret on that day of why he made that friend in this world. So this is one example. Now another example is in Surah Safat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so this is like one case study. The second case study is in Surah Safat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this passage, prior to speaking about this incident, he is speaking about the luxuries of Jannah, the blessings of paradise, and the things that people will enjoy in paradise. And then he says, فَأَقْبَلَ بَعْضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ يَتَسَاءَلُونَ. He says that in Jannah, in paradise, people will be sitting on their pulpits, they'll be sitting on their couches, they'll be enjoying themselves, and they'll be sitting amongst each other, and then one will ask a group, right? They'll begin to speak and they'll begin to question one another. What are they asking? فَأَقْبَلَ بَعْضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ يَتَسَاءَلُونَ قَالَ قَائِلٌ مِّنْهُمْ إِنِّي كَانَ لِي قَرِينٌ. One of them will say that, you know what, we had this one friend back in the day, right? Just like how even in this world you meet an old friend from elementary school or from high school, you meet him after many years, and then when you meet, then you begin to bring up your old colleagues and your old friends. You remember that one friend that I had? You remember what happened to that one guy? What happened to that one girl that we knew, right? So similarly in Jannah, they're going to be sitting, friends will be sitting in Jannah. And then they'll start talking about what happened to that one guy. Does anyone know where he is? Is he in Jannah? Is he in Jahannam? So then he says that this person, this friend of mine, he's explaining what type of friend this was. This was a friend that would say, يَقُولُ أَإِنَّكَ لَمِنَ الْمُصَدِّقِينَ. This person would tell me that, are you really from the believers? Are you a person that actually believes in this religion, believes in all these fairy tales that we're saying that one day we're all going to be resurrected, we're all going to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? أَإِذَا مِتْنَا وَكُنَّا تُرَابًا وَعِظَامًا أَإِنَّا لَمَدِينُونَ? That do you really believe that we're going to die and then we're going to turn into dust, I will turn into bones, and then the bones will turn into dust, and then we'll be resurrected, and then we'll be questioned in regards to the actions that we did in this world? Right? Do you really believe in all of this? Right? So we understand from this statement that this friend was a person that was not a believer. Ibn Atta rahmatullah alayhi, another mufassir, he says that this is regarding two people, right? Both of them were rich. One was a believer, one was a disbeliever. And he says the believer used to use his wealth in spending. He used to spend his wealth in avenues that were pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In sadaqat, giving sadaqah, and just whatever he had, he would donate it. Right? So he used that wealth that Allah gave him, he used to use it for good. The disbeliever was also wealthy and he used to use that wealth in the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But regardless of what their condition was, these are two people. So then it will be told to this person in Jannah that قَالَ هَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُطَّلِعُونَ, that why don't you go look? And then it says that فَطَّلَعَ فَرَآهُ فِي سَوَاءِ الْجَحِيمِ. So where will he look? He'll look in Jahannam. How will he look? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make them look. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make him see. And then he says that فَطَّلَعَ, when he looks, then فَرَآهُ فِي سَوَاءِ الْجَحِيمِ, he will see that one friend that he had, the companion that he had in the middle of Jahannam. In the middle of Jahannam. So then he says, قَالَتَ اللَّهِ إِن كِتَّ لَتُرْدِينَ. Now he's sitting in Jannah. And he says, I swear by Allah, you were very close to me taking me away from this path. You were very close to making me go astray as well. وَلَوْلَا نِعْمَةُ رَبِّي لَكُنْتُ مِنَ الْمُحْضَرِينَ. And immediately, because he's in Jannah, he'll realize that him being in Jannah is the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon him. And he says, it is only the favor of Allah upon me that it is only if it was not for the favor of Allah upon me, then I would be with you as well. In your condition, I would also be in Jahannam. Right? وَلَوْلَا نِعْمَةُ رَبِّي لَكُنْتُ مِنَ الْمُحْضَرِينَ. But now this person, he had that friend, but he did not allow that friend to lead him astray. He stood his ground, he understood what was right. And the fact that he's questioning and he's asking his colleagues about that friend indicates that it was an old friend that he lost and he lost contact with long time ago, right? Which is why he's asking. So he had that friend, he understood that that friend was taking him down a path that was not the path that is befitting of a believer, and he let go of that friend. In the first example in Surah Furqan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he had that friend. He understood what was right and what was wrong, but he still followed his friend and he left the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he left deen. And the example and the result of both of these people, the end result for both, are completely different. One is in Jannah and one will go in Jahannam, right? So this is two examples that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us, wherein we see the effect of a friend can have on us. Now the question is what is the difference between these two? Right? So there's a slight difference. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in regards to the first incident in Surah Furqan, he says that this person had a khalil. لم أتخذ فلانا خليلا يا ويلتا ليتني لم أتخذ فلانا خليلا. He said, why did I make that person my khalil? And in Surah Safat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he wasn't a khalil, because friends, we have many different types of friends. One are just acquaintances. One are people that we might hang around with for a while, but he's not a very close, or she's not a very close friend to ours. Then one is a person who's extremely close. The first, whenever I have a problem, I go immediately to them, right? So that is a khalil, a very, very close friend. Now in Surah Safat, Allah says that this person it wasn't his khalil. What was it? It was his qareen. فأقبل بعضهم قال قائل منهم إني كان لي قرين. He didn't say that إني كان لي خليل. He said that I had a friend, but this friend was of a lower level. He was just like an acquaintance. I used to hang around with him. I used to spend time with him, but I kept it to a limit, right? Because this is also something that we always, youngsters, youth always ask us, that I have this friend, I have this person in my class, and he encourages me or he does very bad things. What should I do? Should I not speak to him? No, it doesn't mean that you don't speak to them. It just means that you don't bring them close. You don't bring them within your inner circle. Whoever you bring within your inner circle, you have to be very careful. This is what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is saying. That فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَحَدُكُمْ مَنْ يُخَالِلْ. That be careful of who you bring within your inner circle. One is you have acquaintances at school. You have acquaintances at work. You have acquaintances of wherever else. So that is different. But another is who are you bringing within your inner circle? And an inner person who's in within your inner circle is a person you spend time with a lot, day in and day out. You're always texting, you're always calling, you're always talking, you're always meeting, right? And this is the example of our social feeds as well. Day in and day out, we're spending time with with social media. How many hours a day? So that's like become a khalil for us, right? So the example and the message of this khutbah and the message of these two studies and these two examples is the effect that our khalil and our friends can have on us. And it's something we need to be very, very careful of, especially living in our time, right? As parents, we need to see who our children's friends are. As parents, we also need to see what is on our children's social media feed as well. What are they watching? What types of videos are coming up on their feed, right? Because if we just let it go, then this is like an ocean. It's like a world that they have access to every single thing in the world. And if we're not going to be careful and we're not going to be engaged and we're not going to be involved, if we're not going to be aware, then we could lose our children, right? And this is not just for youth, but this is even for elders as well, right? Is who are the people that we hang around with the most? Understand that those are the ones that will have an effect on us the most as well. We make dua that Allah, and then the last, I'll end off with this. There's a hadith of Ibn Bazar, wherein Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was asked, what is the quality of a true friend? He says, "Man ذكركم بالله رؤيته وزاد في علمكم منطقه وذكركم بالآخرة عمله." He says that a true friend is a person who, when you see them, they remind you of Allah subhanahu. Just by looking at them, they remind you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When they speak, then it increases you in knowledge. And and their actions remind you of the life hereafter. Yani, this is a person whose priorities are straight. This person who understands the maqsad and the purpose of his existence, and that is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us all such friends and keeps us always in the company of the righteous and pious. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم ورب الحليم. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ونبيك ورسولك وصل على المؤمنين والمؤمنات. قال عليه الصلاة والسلام: خير القرون قرني ثم الذين يلونهم ثم الذين يلونهم. اللهم اغفر لنا وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا كلها دقها وجلها وأولها وآخرها وعلانيتها وسرها. اللهم إنا نسألك العفو والعافية في ديننا ودنيانا وأهلنا ومالنا. اللهم استر عوراتنا وآمن روعاتنا. اللهم إنا نسألك العفو والعافية في ديننا ودنيانا وأهلنا ومالنا. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم انصر المسلمين المظلومين في كل مكان وفي كل زمان. اللهم انصر من نصر دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم واجعلنا منهم، واخذل من خذل دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ولا تجعلنا معهم. عباد الله رحمكم الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. أقيموا الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن